What's up, running fans, throwing fans, jumping fans, all around athletics fans? Welcome to Talking to Novels. I'm Alex Cuesta, partner in crime over there, Dave Hyatt, always hanging out. What's up, brother?
Not much. This past weekend to me was the epitome of where track and field is with Diamond League and LA. Just the difference in production. I thought the Diamond League was awesome. You know, it had great people in it, and then the meet in LA. You know, people pulling out, not having the 800 in the primetime block was atrocious. You had a great field. You know, one of our past guests, Clayton Murphy, pulled it out in the end, but it just goes to show that this sport just needs the athletes to compete in the events that they say that they're going to run, and to people for stop ducking each other.
And it's at every level we're seeing the same kid. I forget where it's from. Did a minor celebration again, threw his fist.
That's nonsense.
Got DQ'd when he was like 50 meters ahead. And then in the D3 nationals, I believe,
starting a 5K.
All starting a 5K. And listen, I get it. Rules are rules. The rule needs to be changed. Every event needs to be a warning to the field when you get to the championship level like that.
He was a favorite too.
Favorite. So we're ruining our own sport. Well, not we, but people within it are ruining our own sport. Before we get into anything fun, today is Tuesday, May 30th, 2023. Any astute listeners know that we usually record on Mondays. Dave, you weren't feeling too well yesterday. We can't do this show without Dave Hyatt. It's not as fun. So we pushed it back. Thank God our guest this week was gracious enough to do that. But like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Go find us on socials. Follow us, interact with us, Talking in Novels. We're there. Last week, we had an awesome show. Dave Alfano was on. He is the co-founder of Trials of Miles Racing. If you recently heard that, it's because he ran a fantastic meet, giving out $8,000 to the 800-meter winners. And, two great races. They're a great meet. Dave's doing fantastic stuff. Please, please, please go on trialsofmilesracing.com. Go support what they're doing if you're a running fan. Volunteer if they're in your area. Give help, because if you're listening to this, at this point, more than likely, you're on board with our mission of getting this sport bigger. The only way we're going to do it is a groundswell. So we have to do that. And we're going to talk about some PRs, Hyatt. We have some. Our good buddy, Coach Tefelsky, always the gift that keeps on giving, over from Westfield. We have Alex Valencia running a 4:21 in the 1600. James Hamilton, a 2:01 in the 800. Max Reisman, 47:10 in the shot. Brenton Hatch, 40 feet 4 inches in the shot as well. James McGovern, 147 feet in the disc. And Sanu Glasgow, 21.6 in the long jump. And I could see it in our eyes, our guest right now going through his head as he's thinking, in the past, I would have recruited all of these individuals. But we right now have a legend in the Jersey Shore area for coaching. He's Coach Joe Compagni. He's a former director and head coach at Monmouth University for 24 years. He's now a coach and event director with Shore AC, that's Shore Athletic Club for those that don't know, and a consultant in the world of track and field, cross country, and road racing. Coach, what's going on?
Nice to be on with you guys. Yeah, thank you.
We're absolutely excited. Again, we've said this to a few people. You were one of the guys. We put our heads together on guests who we want to get in terms of pros in this. And we're like, if we can get Coach Joe, that would be awesome. Considering, Dave and I are both Jersey Shore guys.
Hey,
and
listen,
all of us knew who you were going through high school. And
who did you see more at any meet that had any relevance? It was Coach Compagni from Monmouth. He put in the work. He was always there. And it was just it. And it showed in the results that he got as a coach. I mean, it was tremendous.
Yeah. Well, Alex, you asked me, do I remember you? And of course I remember you, remember you as a high school guy and as a Marist guy. And and you guys are doing great things with the podcast. It's really fun to listen to, and you've had some awesome guests. So it's been fun.
Yeah, I was telling everyone, I'm like, this is actually the first college coach that actually ever talked to me in high school at all in any sort of way. And I was like, always just forever grateful. And, always was like, at times I'm like, I love my time at Marist, but man, what Coach put together at Monmouth would have been a blast. But overall, we're pumped to have you on. I want to jump right into our first segment, the segment we do with all of our guests. You were a runner as well as most of our, guests are. When did you get the spark that running, track and field, cross country, everything it encompasses was the way you want to go with your life?
Like most people, it was high school for me. If you asked me what I wanted to do as a young guy, I would tell you that I wanted to play in the NFL, and if my backup plan was to be in the NBA, right? So
Yep.
neither of those worked out for me as a skinny 5'11" guy. Um, but I was actually getting ready for basketball season one year. I think I was a sophomore, and just running. I would go to the college by me. Grew up in Cortland, New York, and I would go to SUNY Cortland. I would run on this concrete oval above an ice rink, and then I would go shoot baskets for hours to get ready for basketball season. And discovered that I was not going to thrive or do very well on the basketball team, and that the running thing was kind of okay. So I didn't start until I was a junior in high school.
Wow.
And then went out for cross country. Knew absolutely nothing about it. Literally got handed a pair of what looked to me like a pair of bowling shoes with nails in them before my first cross country race that were spikes at the time. I think I fell down 3 times in my first race because I didn't know what spikes were. And but discovered that I liked it, and discovered it was one of those things that you could, if you put more work into it, you can get more out of it, and really wanted to find a place in the athletics world where I could do something, and that was my best shot.
It's interesting. You could say that you share the same start as Johnny Gray. You both started junior year running, so there you go. You have a claim there. You started with Johnny Gray, and also it's interesting. I didn't know you were from Cortland because one of my former Marist coaches, Terry Horton, is an absolute legend up at SUNY Cortland in terms of running and football. So, yeah.
I have to catch up with Terry because I know him very well, of course, as a fellow college coach. He's an awesome coach, and I love the folks at Marist. They're all great people and great coaches. But I did not know about Terry's Cortland connection.
Cortland legend, 400-meter hurdle specialist. And a football player there as well. He was a 2-sport beast. So. Wow. You never know, right? When you're talking, because Terry's a very humble guy. He's not going to talk about himself, but I'm going to brag about Terry Horton because I love the man. He's like another father to me. But this is about you, Coach. We're jumping back in there.
So I have a question.
Go ahead, Dave.
So you didn't start running till junior year cross country. So when you were getting ready to go into college, how was that whole process then? Because you didn't really have much of a background at that time.
No.
For coaches to actually see you. So how did you end up at Delaware, and how did that whole process go?
Yeah, so I only ran 2 years, and I ran 3 seasons, but I only ran 2 years. I was not a star by any means. I'm at a upstate New York high school, and not the star of even my own team. And as I was looking at schools, this is kind of, I'm not young, so this is pre-internet. You really could only find out a little bit about teams, and they could only find out a little bit about you. And no one was calling my house, that's for sure, to recruit me. So I called 2 coaches, 2 schools I was looking at. One of them called me back, and it was Coach Fisher at Delaware. He asked me about my times. I told him. He didn't laugh. And he said, well, if you want to, you can be on the team. And that's all I knew, and that's all I had to hear. And that was one of the main reasons I went to Delaware, was I was going to get a shot to be on this team.
Not to mention the gorgeous campus of Delaware, and the education is fantastic over there.
Yeah. And then from there, you end up going to be a captain of your college team. So how did that whole process go?
Yeah, so I got there, and I was completely unprepared, really. I surely didn't run enough in the summer, surely did not have a ton of ability there. And this is kind of back in the day when there were some bigger teams. Not many teams are like this on the men's side anymore, but there are 35 men on the cross country team.
Wow.
And I was literally 34th on the team in most of the meets. And not only was I not able to keep up with the top guys, but I'd never even seen anybody or heard about anybody who could run that fast. So it was really an eye-opener for me. And my roommate was actually from my hometown, Jared Savage, and he was a football player. And after I got kicked around for about 6 or 7 weeks, my first season, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't really belong. And he kind of looked at me like, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're not quitting. Like, you're not leaving the team. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not. I guess I'm going to stick this out.
That's when bullying is a positive, kids. That's a positive bullying right there. That's good.
right. Yeah. I was a football player, positive bullying, and he's somebody I'm still in touch with now. So forever grateful. And, I stuck it out, and I certainly was never a star of the team there. But I got to the point where, I worked my way up where I could contribute, and did a ton of work like we all do in college to get better. And was, it was an honor to be a captain as a senior and, try to help the guys around me, and coming from somebody that loved team sports, that was really my favorite part, was really helping the team be a team.
Yeah, we actually hear that a lot. Almost everybody here says that their favorite part was being on relays or being part of a cross-country team. That been more than anything that they did as an individual.
Yeah.
Was being a part, of the whole team concept.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you've talked to some of your guests about, different ways to improve the sport. And I think it was Danielle Toro may have said that, the team aspect is really big. If we could kind of focus more on the team aspect, that would be a way that we could get some attention. Because a lot of times, I don't want to get on my soapbox yet. We're not there yet, but we come home from meets and a lot of the meets we go to, we don't keep score. And then we try to explain our sport to other people, and they don't know the difference between a 1,500 and a 15,000. And we don't keep score. And, we have these funny events that people don't know anything about. And then we're like, why isn't anyone paying attention to us? Why won't they watch us? Why don't they follow us? Well, if you can make it a team thing and you can make it relatable and you can keep score, in our country, that goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Certainly does.
Absolutely.
So, Coach, what were your specialties on the track during your time at running? Obviously distance, but what did you do on the track itself?
I was a 2-mile guy in high school, and then 5K, 10K guy in college.
So if you don't mind,
longer was better for me.
This is always the fun part. What were your PRs?
I think I ran, I'm trying to forget them, actually, Alex. I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that. No, I think I ran low 15s, like a 15:06 5K.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's always the fast guys that like to sit there and be like, almost sub 15. It's like, okay. I was lucky to run 16 in my heyday.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't fast, and I wasn't setting any records, that's for sure.
And it's funny, Hyatt, this comes back to what Adam Vest said. Guys like us, we have such a skewed idea of the sport.
Yeah.
We have Coach here saying, 15:06, not fast, 15:06. That's not fast. In our world, yeah, sure. It's not 14:30. It's not low 14. So we're all sitting there like, it's not going to make nationals. But it's like in reality, 15:06 is fire on the track. Like, you're burning it up there, Coach. Don't shy away.
And he didn't have any super spikes either. He was doing no spikes.
Everyone wore half-inch spikes down probably then. So this is the part I'd like to let you, you talked about the team aspect. What are some of your favorite memories as a runner? If you want to talk like high school, especially, obviously you had some success in high school to have your times even considered by a coach. And, UDEL is D1. So it's not like it's a slouch of a program. D1's D1. It doesn't matter where you go. So what were your favorite experiences, high school and college?
Yeah, I think high school, my coach was also a teacher, like most of our high school coaches were.
Yep.
And he was an environmental science teacher, so he really gave us an appreciation of the outdoors. As a cross-country guy, you kind of get to appreciate some of that, and he certainly did a lot of that. But he also was a bit of a rebel. So they would tell the people, the teachers at school, things that you could and couldn't wear. And whatever they said that the teachers couldn't wear, that's what he wore to school. And I could tell you more stories that are probably not for public consumption, but he was kind of that rebel guy out there. We ran a lot of places that we probably shouldn't run and did some things we shouldn't have done under his guidance and with his encouragement. But he made it fun. He made it fun. When you go back, as somebody that, you go back to your hometown and you think about, geez, I was a brand new runner and we ran to these places that you can't even imagine, up power lines and into different towns and different places. You didn't even know how far it was or how fast you were going or whatever. And it didn't feel like work because he was out there with us and he made it fun. And he had this very, colorful personality. We laughed at everything that he told us. So just being around him, being around my teammates, those trips that we all remember, those were probably the best memories from high school.
Certainly something you probably couldn't get away with as a coach, like now doing. And it's kind of funny, like he fits kind of the archetype, right? Environmental science, rebel, like he's like definitely like the archetype. But you know what? That's cool though, because there is so many different ways to get people to love this sport. And one of the ways to love it is to make it fun, because the reality is XC is grueling. Training for track is grueling. That's why we have the difficulty in our sport of people, they get a little bit tweaked in an injury. They're not going out there because you can't give it 80% and be good in our sport. It's not like other sports where the superstar going out at 85% is still good enough. That's not the case in track and field.
Because you can't do it.
Right. And in other sports, they have teammates that are out there with him that can help kind of pick up the slack. Here it's like, like the whole thing with Jacobs, like he's hurt. It stinks that he's pulled out against Curly like 7 times, but I mean, why run if you're hurt? Like,
especially at 100, you're asking your body to go at 110% for 105, 110 meters. Cause
I don't like it, but
stop through the line. So
yeah. And I think that's hard for people outside of our sport to understand, that you can't, you can have a tweaked hamstring and kind of wrap it up and still make a tackle as a football player, or still get through a game as a basketball player. But, and maybe you're compromised a little bit and you're not at your best, but you can still play. Yes. But you can't really do what we do if you're not at your best. It's not going to. But
maybe we could bring this up in the improving the sport aspect, because if there were teams involved, like there are in college, like there are in high school, where you do see a little more sacrifice, right? If a team is going for a national title, that, 1,500 specialist that might be a little tweaked or whatever, like the 400-meter guy that, maybe tweaked something in that big race is going to probably jump on the 4x4 because he's still a top 4 member of the program. So that we can get into that. We'll throw around some ideas later, Coach, because you have a lot involved.
Right. Yeah, so, sounds good.
I want to know. So you're in college. At what point did you kind of say this is something that I want to do as a coach? Like I've learned so much. I just love the sport. This is something that I really want to do when I graduate.
And did you want to be a coach? Yeah, that's the main question.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that in college. I knew that my first 2 years of college. Like a lot of us do, I did a lot of things wrong. You're trying to study, you're trying to have a social life, and then you're pretending you're going to train like you've never trained before, and didn't know why it wasn't working and why I was always in the training room and, why I wasn't getting better. And, it really takes a couple of years to figure that out. And, then I got to junior and senior year and I said, okay, maybe I need to go to sleep at night. Maybe I need to take better care of myself. Maybe I don't need to be at every party. And, took it more seriously, and then saw the results, saw some big improvements because I was more dedicated to it. And, I'm not afraid to say I'm one of those guys who cried at my last college race, because you realize how much time and energy you put into it and that you love it and
it's
you
over.
Don't want it to end. And that's kind of the cool thing in our sport is it doesn't have to end. The high school environment ends, the college environment ends, but there's other ways to stay in the sport. But I didn't coach right away. I think I didn't think that would be a role that I'd be in. I was a communication major, and I was thinking I still wanted to be in sports, but I was going to get into sports other ways. So I was going to work in the PR side and the sports information side, and I did some of that. Stayed connected to the sport through grad school, through a club. But I realized that trying to do it from the other side was too far away. It wasn't quite, if you're a sports information person, I really admire those people that do amazing work. But you can't have an impact on a win or a loss, really. You're just kind of promoting what's happening and what has happened. So, after grad school and after working in the real world for a couple of years, I got an opportunity to coach, and I had to. My family was sure that I was crazy, that I had gone crazy because I had to leave a real job making real money to go coach somewhere I'd never been
for a low salary
Division II school. Or I think it was $2,000. I'm pretty sure it was $2,000 for my first year. That wasn't for the season. That was for the year.
Oh, wow.
But the good news was that after 4 years, my salary was $2,000, and it wasn't for the season. That was for the year.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
So, you do odd jobs and you do other stuff. But I remember just starting coaching and, kind of going from my terrible little apartment down the hill to practice and thinking, man, this doesn't, just like it didn't feel like work running in high school, that didn't feel like work to me. It felt like, something that was really fun and really enjoyable and something that I couldn't wait to do.
And and we've all coached here, and I think we'll all agree there's kind of an addiction to when you have your athletes be successful. It's like we've all had success here on the track. We've all been good runners, and there's nothing like watching your athlete just get a PR. Run a really good race and put it all together. And it doesn't have to be, your top athlete. Like, coach, you've coached from some tremendous athletes at Monmouth, but I'm pretty sure you were happy when that senior that was wanted to break 15 so bad at the conference meet finally broke 15, or you took them the last chance and they did it, and you're able to share that moment. Like, those things in coaching become an addiction, and it's kind of hard, to give up. So what have been some of your favorite memories now on the coaching end that you can talk to?
Yeah, that's a hard one because there's so many good ones, and I really was so fortunate to, after being 4 years somewhere else, to come to Monmouth at a time when the school was growing and athletics was growing, and kind of came in at a good time. So certainly the first time we won a conference title, which was not until my third year there, was really special. That was a team that didn't have a lot of stars, didn't have anybody going to NCAAs or anything like that, but was a team that really put it together and, scratched and clawed for every point and found a way to win. So that was really cool. And then, of course, as happens when you coach a men's team and a women's team, very quickly someone said, well, what's wrong with your women's team? So then, then you're like, all right, I got to get it done on the other side too. And so it was, a couple of years later when our women's team won for the first time. And so those first couple of championships are absolutely very special. And then being a part of, some individuals that got to a high level. Very often those individuals were people that were coached by my assistants and not by me, and just kind of to be there and be along for the ride, to see these guys, men and women, go to NCAAs, go to Olympic trials, to be a part of that environment with somebody that's part of your program is really magical.
It's just you did, but though, this is the humble side of you, right? You're saying I didn't have much to do. It was all my assistant coaches. And again, we've all been coaches here. We know that's not true. We know that you have, the head coach, unlike a lot of other sports, is very instrumental in track and field. And, you do have a big say of what goes on in the day to day. Yes, your sprint coaches, your weight coaches, your jump coaches are important, but it's not often that a head coach just gets to be a head coach, right? You usually have a specialty that you're also participating in. So you do have a big role. Now, we haven't addressed this much, Hyatt, but is there a learning curve that you had to go through? Because obviously you're a male. You ran with all guys only, done everything with all guys. Was there a learning curve on how to train the women in terms of getting a success? Is there a difference in the way that you approach training young ladies as you do to young men?
Yeah, I think that there's just a big learning curve in general. And I think that's one of the most overlooked aspects of starting to coach, because you guys were high school and college athletes. And I know when I finished college, I was pretty sure that I knew everything. And then you start coaching and you realize you know nothing. Yep. What you know really is, what someone asked you to do and what your team did. And that's all you know. Yeah. And that's really, I'm fortunate to have some good coaches. And I certainly, you take some from your good coaches. But one of the things that I got to do at Monmouth was we had a course called Coaching Track and Field. And the course would normally be a group of athletes, not all track athletes. It would be basketball players, football players, people who weren't athletes at all. And we would talk about training theory and coaching philosophy in general, and then apply that to track and field and apply it to other sports too. And one of the first things that I would do in that class is I would ask them, how many of you are athletes or were athletes? And almost every hand would go up. And I would say, how many of you had good coaches? And still almost every hand would go up. And I would say, how many of you would coach the way you were coached? And still almost every hand would go up. And that's where I would stop them, because I would say, if we all just coached the way we were coached, things would never get any better.
Correct.
Like that. You have to go back. You have to go back. You have to go in reverse 100 miles and be like, well, why was I coached the way I was coached? And was I coached properly? And do I understand the science of this? And do I understand training theory and coaching? Do I have a coaching philosophy? And, you have to study and do some research so that you really understand what you're doing. And the example I use is, when I played football in junior high, you didn't get water at practice because if you wanted water, you were just a big baby.
Right.
You really, there's no, if you ask for water, you're certainly, asking for trouble, really. And now we know that if you don't drink water for a long period of time, you die. So, probably that wasn't the best thing.
No.
Probably we should not just coach the way we were coached, or, we might be causing some big problems. So yeah, I think that's one of the overlooked things is you really do need to do some homework and study and, do coaching education. And then to answer your question, Alex, I do think that men's teams and women's teams have differences, and every team is unique. Every team from year to year is different. And we almost always met separately as a men's team and a women's team. Didn't mean the workouts were different or the meets were different or anything else. There was just a different energy with each team. And it varied from year to year and team to team. But I just wanted the women's team to have their own culture and environment and the men's team to have their own culture and environment. And those teams certainly supported each other. That's where our sport is unique is, the men's team can support the women's team and vice versa. But when you add up the scores, you're adding up a men's score and you're adding up a women's score. And those teams needed to have their own identity and their own leaders and have their own culture.
Right. One thing that I always wondered, you were at a school, it was Division I, but we could say it was a smaller D1 school, not power conference. When you were going to meets to watch high school kids, did you have a list of kids that you were going to focus on? And did you know that, that it's not even worth talking to certain kids because they won't go here because of how good that they were in that sense? Like, was that something you thought of? Or did you think, I'm going to go after the absolute best of the best I can get everybody? Or did you have a sense of, well, I'm not going to ask, this kid, I'll just focus on these kids here?
Yeah. Good question. I certainly have people that you're looking at, and I'll tell you two quick stories about that. One of my first years, I was at Foot Locker Northeast. So I'm up at Van Cortlandt Park, and Gags was there as well. And I had met him once or twice before, but he didn't really know me. And I thought, oh, great, this is my chance to go talk to Gags more and learn from him. And he spent about 3 seconds with me that day. Now, this is a warm guy who's normally very friendly and great with everyone, but he was there to recruit. He wasn't there to hang out with other college coaches. And it, dawned on me, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not really here to hang out with other college coaches. I'm here to talk to high school coaches and to, within the rules, meet some high school athletes after the meet if possible and to see them. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, he's doing his job. And I was worried about hanging out. And then probably a year or so later, I'm at Homedale Park, and there was another coach there whose name I won't mention, from a smaller school. And he said, well, who are you looking at today? And I, said, everybody that I can, as many people as I can. And he said, well, here's my list. Danielle Toro, Jill Smith, he's going through this list. And he's in a program that's was much smaller than mine. I'm like, that's a nice list. That's the top people in the state, and they're probably not coming to you. I didn't say that, but that was my thought. Right. Was, that's nice that you wrote down the names of the best people in the state, who are some of the best people in the country, and you may be spinning your wheels a little bit. So yeah, we really looked for people that were going to be a fit for us. We certainly would love to talk to and be interested in the top people. But very often the top people wanted to go away, or the top people in, Monmouth and Ocean County wanted to go away. They didn't want to go to the school in their backyard. Some of them did. And it was really more about finding people that were going to be a fit in our program, who weren't always, who almost were never the top people in the state.
Now, did you notice that people from Ocean and Monmouth County, how did they look at Monmouth University differently because it was so close, like rather than like someone from North Jersey or Southern Jersey? Like, I don't want to go there. I mean, that's right in my county. It's close to my town.
Yeah. Yeah, if we could have taken Monmouth and put it, somewhere else a couple hours away, and you said, "Hey, look at this great campus. Look at our nice facilities. Look at the great programs we have. Look, we're a mile from the beach," they would have, jumped at it. But because it was right in their backyard, they might not be interested because they wanted to go away. But there again, there were local people that were interested in staying home. There's some people that do want to stay home, but more often than not, like most of us do, you want to go somewhere.
Yeah, I remember that was kind of my theory when I came to it. Like I wanted to be far enough to be able to come home, but not super close. And I remember you were recruiting Steve Chanellas out of Lakewood the year that I was there, and Steve really wanted me to go. Like he every meet he would be like, "You coming to Monmouth yet?" And it's like, no, not going to Monmouth. It's too close. And Steve was a great dude, and and I ended up going to Marist. But I remember it's kind of that same situation where I did, me and Coach had some conversations in high school, and it was kind of like, I want to go away. Like I didn't want to be. And again, Monmouth was great. I had nothing against it. Great academically, great athletically. And, it's just kind of exactly what Coach said, just wanted to go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question in terms of when you got to Monmouth, obviously, like Coach said, like I had said, smaller school, still D1. When you went to them with your, view, with your image of how you could build this program, how supportive were they, not only with go ahead and get it done, like we believe in you, but financially? Because that's often the challenge with these smaller D1 programs, right? You're not going to be Ohio State. You're not going to be the SEC schools where they're getting basically full rosters of, or majority of the rosters are scholarship kids. Like full scholarship, like it's tough for the amount of money. How much was Monmouth there, and did they invest more as you showed them more and more success?
Yeah, they absolutely did. I think there's the feeling out period where they're trying to figure out if I'm for real, and I'm trying to figure out how supportive they are of me. Yeah. But it is true, as you start to build some momentum, you get that support in return. And that's not always the case. I think in our sport especially, there's plenty of programs that have tremendous coaches and they don't get the support from their administration, and then they can only go so far. They're working without a facility or without a staff. But for me, really, almost every year, things got better at the school. There were things that were improving at the school, new facilities, new programs, et cetera. And things got better in athletics. Things continued to grow. And certainly the answer was not always yes to my requests from the athletic director. But there was always it would be funny. I had the same athletic director, Dr. McNeil, for my whole 24 years there. And I would say, I don't know, at least 10, if not 20 or 30 times, I would go in like all coaches do. You go in and ask for things that you want. And most of the time I would get kicked out of the office, because I was crazy and asking for too much. But very often she would come back to me, maybe it was a month, maybe it was a year later. And that thing that we had asked for, we would get. And she had done a tremendous job of working with the administration to say, hey, look, track when she gets there has whatever, 2 scholarships, 2 for the men and 3 for the women. But she puts a plan in place to say, hey, what if we just give these programs, not just track, but some of the other programs, an extra 0.2, 0.5, 0.7 per year. And at the time, you're like, oh, geez, this is going to take forever. Okay, I went from 2 to 2.5. I went from 2.5 to 3. But then you turn around after a few years and you're like, oh, it's not 3 anymore. It's double that. And it's double that again. And then all of a sudden you can start to help more students than you could before. And, you're building some momentum and things are going in a good direction. And I saw that plan on paper from her my first year. And it was kind of this, 10 plus year projection that the school supported. So that's super valuable. Makes you look smart when you continue to get resources.
Yeah.
Was there any acceleration? Because from the outside looking in, once Monmouth made that one magical tournament run in basketball, and like the bench really got big notice on ESPN, was there kind of an acceleration there from an athletic side? Because from the outside looking in,
which run are you talking about? Because I remember one of my high school teammates, well, not my teammates, one of my classmates 2 years older than me went there, and they made it to the tournament the first time. It was Corey Albano. And they actually made it there for the first time, and Monmouth was on TV. So like,
it was
that
more
was
more
that
the
was cool.
recent one. More the recent one. I think in like the late 2000s when they went, and I remember watching on ESPN, and I think was it Pappas was the star of the team maybe, and I think it was a big one. It was a year that they got blown out, and then he stole the ball and dunked it, and because he was pissed.
Oh
I forget
yeah.
which one it
Yeah.
was. And,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and that was the year that they made the tournament. And from me, just the outside looking in, it kind of looks like that's when the facility started to get upgraded. And that's when, I know some of the athletes from Manchester that went to Monmouth because they were like,
Jordan Ferguson.
Jordan Ferguson went,
Right,
and then Joe
right,
Johnson
sure.
played football there. And, so there were a lot of really good players that went there. And, Josh Amanowitz played football there too, like a lot of Manchester guys. But it seems like they kind of not got more serious, but were like, okay, let's do this. Like, let's accelerate whatever plans we have. From an inside baseball perspective, did it seem that way as well, that after that national attention came, like they were like, let's kick this into gear a little more. Let's get our coaches a little more support because we can do this.
Yeah. Yes and no. We actually, those couple years recently when they had some great teams and they beat USC and they beat Notre Dame and, had some huge wins, they actually didn't make the tournament. They lost in the conference finals. And, I think we made the second round of the NIT, if I remember right. But we've had some great teams since King Rice has been there. Tremendous teams.
Yeah.
He's the coach, one of the coaches I admire, because from the day he walked in, he said, we'll play anybody, anywhere. And they schedule these teams. And a lot of schools will still not schedule against him, even though not every one of his teams has been as strong as those teams. A lot of teams will not, including some in-state schools, will not schedule Monmouth basketball because they know, they may come and get you, and those schools don't like that very well. But
did coach just call out Rutgers without saying it? Just throwing that out there. Dave, you're going to take offense, Hyatt?
Rutgers is getting some basketball dogs coming in.
They are not the only ones. I should say that. But yeah, there's teams that there's teams that were even, I'll tell you, slight inside baseball without naming any schools, that we had scheduled. They make their schedules 2-3 years out, and they called us back after a couple of years where we had some big runs and have some big upsets, and they said, we're not coming, and we're not playing you. They canceled games because they just, in their mind, couldn't afford to run the risk of us upsetting them. But that's kind of the college basketball world. So, there were times, we went to the tournament a couple of times my first few years there, and it didn't change anything directly in my program. It wasn't like someone, somebody came with a treasure chest of resources for us, but it changed the perspective, and it changed the outlook, and it changed what people thought was possible. It's just elevated, as Dr. McNeil would say, all boats will rise. When somebody does well, it's just good for everybody.
I mean, because having that success can only help when you're going out there and you're recruiting. Hey, you can go to the basketball games. It's a great atmosphere.
Right. Right. That. Yeah. When basketball's doing well, when football's doing well, when other teams do well. And that's one of the unique things at Monmouth too. And one of the reasons I always loved it there is all the coaches are in one building, and they have been forever. Well, we were in trailers when I first got there, but that's another story. But for most of my time, we were all in the same building. So you walk down the hall, I walk in, and, there's the football coach, there's the basketball coach, there's the soccer coach, and we're all kind of supporting each other and asking each other how it's going. And at the next level above Monmouth, that's not always the case. Very often there's a basketball building and there's a football building. And
absolutely.
And you don't know those coaches, you don't see those coaches. And there's a real sense of, rapport and support for the programs within the department there, which is really cool.
So, going along with, the things that you did in your career and how great Monmouth became under your tutelage. And, as I said, like, obviously Dave went to, Rutgers. I ended up at Marist, but there was always something where I would look back and I would see Monmouth results. And, I'd be happy when I saw good things happen in Monmouth, because that's my backyard. I'm an Ocean County kid. Like, It was our school. So just seeing the great things that you did there, for us on the outside looking in, we're like, that's freaking awesome. Like they're having success. How do you, as a coach, as a director of both the men's and women's program, how do you measure success when you're looking back at a season? What do you do to look back and say, this was a successful season. This was a little bit of a drawback. I could be better here. We could do this. Like, what was that like in your measurements of success? Because to us, it's results. It's X's and O's. It's, Dylan Capwell going to nationals. It's all these crazy things. But what was it for you as a coach and your program?
Yeah, I think that, and I think it's true at the MAC, CAA, NEC level, and it's true at the Big Ten, SEC level. The first thing is always your conference. Those are sort of your rivals. Those are the ones who are who you're going to face in our sport 3 times a year, 6 times a year, really, men and women. And that's really the first measuring stick is how'd you do in the conference, and that's the first thing that everybody's going to ask. And for us, as we started to have some close battles, there'd be years where you'd come up short, and you'd have to convince your team that they were still a very good team if they happened to lose the conference meet, 176 to 175. You'd be like, you're still a pretty good team, even though we didn't win. And then as you're, winning the conference more, which we were fortunate to do, then you're looking for the next challenge. Then you're saying, how well can we do? And I always loved IC4As and ECACs.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was our chance to line up with everybody else in the Northeast, with some Big East teams, with teams that were, from different conferences or at bigger schools than us. And we knew we were going to go to that meet and we're going to keep score and we're going to be able to measure, where we're at against them. So to climb up at that meet, to climb up from being my first couple of years, barely having anybody qualify and being able to get towards the top of that meet and to win IC4As once in track and to win an ECAC title in cross country, those things are really cool too. So certainly those, in our sport, the results are easy to measure and, getting people NCAAs, those kind of things. But, it sounds corny to say, but obviously you're measuring success by a lot more than wins and losses and championships and team scores. There's a lot of other things that are super important that are really your measuring sticks of what success is.
Yeah. So I'll say this, while it was cool to see you while I was coaching at Marist, like all the time while Monmouth was in the MAC, really happy you guys aren't in the MAC anymore. Like you guys just came in, kicked the doors in, kicked everyone's ass, men and women's side for, what were you there for, like 5 years? I think it was. It wasn't long.
6, yeah.
It was 5 or 6 years, and it was kind of like, everyone kind of realized, I think, jointly, it's like, Monmouth, Coach built the program here that's kind of a little bit too big for the MAC. And we have some good schools. Ryder's good. Manhattan's good. Like, like they built some good programs. But like you guys came in and was like, they're a little bit a step above what we're doing here in the MAC. So it was great seeing it time, but awesome to get you out.
It was Monmouth and track, and then in XC you had Iona.
Right.
Oh my God.
It was just a
Iona's still there though. They
juggernaut.
Won't leave.
Yeah. No, they're tremendous in cross country. I asked somebody once, look, what do you think the top sport in the MAC is? And you get different opinions from different people, but I was very biased, and I said the best sport in the MAC is men's cross country, because you usually have a team in Iona that's in the top 20 in the country, and then there's years where you have 1 or 2 or 3 other teams who are in the top 100 in the country. And I'll ask people, like, what other sport in the MAC is there where there's a top 20 team and then 3 or 4 other top 100 teams? And I don't think there is one.
And a fair amount of representatives, at least competing at the regional level, like qualifying very highly and getting into nationals from the MAC. It's not all the team. There's a lot of individuals that race there too. So yeah, it is extremely competitive XC in the MAC.
Yeah. So in your coaching tenure, was it hard to change conferences, like going from the NEC to the MAC, and then because you guys changed conferences quite a bit in your tenure there. So
just once for me. Just once for me. It was from the NEC to the MAC, and it was a change. When we came in, Iona had the longest winning streak in the country in men's cross country, and they still do. Nobody's touched them.
Yep.
And Manhattan had the longest winning streak in the country in men's track.
Coach Mecca was great over there for Manhattan.
Yeah, he had a tremendous program, and that was a big challenge for us to come in and say, okay, we've won the NEC a few years in a row. Can we win the MAC? And glad to say we did. And then after I left, they've moved into the CAA, and that's a new challenge. The CAA has some schools that are very well funded and strong academically, and Coach Nelson's doing a great job of meeting that challenge. They've been right there this year, in track.
Got second, I think. Right?
Yeah, they're second Northeastern. The women's side is even deeper and even more of a challenge. And it's a new challenge, and I think that's what you want. You want to find those new challenges and find new levels that your program can go to.
So what was it like passing the torch to Coach Nelson? Did you have any friendly advice? Because that's one of the things, because you had a program for 24 years, vast majority of those 24 years successful, like as successful as you could want to be as a coach. Did you give any advice to Coach Nelson, and what would be advice to any coaches that are kind of inheriting a program now, or high school, college level, regardless, that you could give them in order to set themselves up for success?
Yeah, it's nice. I didn't know him before he came to Monmouth, but it's been great to get to know him, and we talk a lot, and I can give him my 2 cents, and then he can do whatever he wants to do. And he's done a great job of molding the program and continuing to have success in the program. So it's fun for me as a former coach to just see what they're doing, and I'm their biggest fan. Glad to help however I can help if he has questions. And it was interesting because he comes in, and the first year he comes in, after the indoor season is when the pandemic hits. So his first, a good part of his first 3 years are these years that are really kind of weird, and difficult in a way that I never had to deal with, and storms that you never thought you'd have to navigate.
Yeah.
So he was able to get them through those times, and kind of come out the other side with a strong program.
Yeah. Were you almost grateful that you were out and then COVID hit and you didn't have to deal with that?
Yeah. A few people asked me if I knew that was coming. And of course, nobody knew that was coming.
We found the source. Source of it.
They're like, did you know? No.
So what other advice would you give to any coaches that are coming in order to kind of set themselves up to at least have a chance at success? Because nothing's guaranteed, right? But what would you give as advice that way?
Yeah. I think, one thing is one that I already mentioned, don't just coach the way you were coached. Just because somebody made you do, 100 times 100 or some crazy workout or did some crazy thing, really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and understand why you're doing it, and study and learn, and find some people in the sport who are mentors. And I think that's one of the cool things in our sport is, you're at meets for a long time, and I think almost everybody in the sport will, if you wander over to them in between heats of a meet at an event, they'll talk to you. They will let you ask them questions and be glad to give you their input. And then you have to decide what to do with all that information, because you have to put your own stamp on it. You have to be your own person. You have to build the brand and the culture that you want. And I think that's easier to do once you study, prepare, do coach's education, do all that stuff. And then I think the other advice I would give is and you don't realize this very often as a young coach, but to realize the impact that you have, not just wins and losses, but just on everybody that comes through your program. And you really are the one who has a lot to say with what their experience is going to be like. And, you guys are probably doing this because you had great experiences in high school and college. If you had miserable experiences, you would just go do something else and run away from the sport. But if you have a good experience, you want to stay involved, and you remember those things that you did, and you remember someone who believed in you. I listened just recently to your to your podcast with Danielle Toro, and she talked a lot about Brian Zatorsky.
Yep.
Brian started coaching with me. His first 2 years were as a Monmouth assistant.
That's awesome.
And then he goes on to have tremendous success at Southern.
Yeah.
And, just hearing her talk about him and the impact that he had, really because he believed in her, and there's countless stories like that of someone saying, hey, I believe in you, and spending time with you, and, investing not just in your athletic ability, but in your development as a young person. That's huge. And as you're a coach, if you're a teacher, you absolutely have an impact. As a coach, you're going to see somebody every day, and you're going to spend a couple hours with them every day, and you're going to travel with them almost every weekend. And the impact that you can have on young people's lives is, it's hard to measure. It's hard to measure and shouldn't be overlooked. In terms of things you do and things you say and decisions you make, that should always be in the forefront of your mind is if you're going to be a good coach, I think.
So speaking of which, as a coach, when you have athletes who go on to success after they leave you, I'm sure you're always rooting, like watching Allie Wilson every weekend run in the 800s at the national world level.
Good.
What is that like? That has to be such a cool feeling. Like I got to coach her, even though you're not coaching her now, just knowing that you probably instilled a lot of that work ethic and that drive that she has, a lot of that came from being a runner at Monmouth.
Yeah. And, she's a great example, and her primary coach was Chris Torello, and he did a beautiful job with her, and I was glad to help a little bit. But just seeing, she had a very normal college career where she had her struggles and had some time where she wasn't confident and had some injuries and had to overcome a lot, and had to have someone like Coach Torello really believe in her and say, hey, you can be really special. And her spending a lot of time saying, like, me, really? Like, you think I can run with those people? And then, buying in over time and being able to do it. And then to see her keep doing it, and to see some of the other people, her and Ford Palmer and others, that have had success after college that's just a blast. It's really, really cool for them.
So I have,
go ahead, Dave.
Just one more thing about coaching. How much did the influx in technology change in your career in terms of the recruiting process?
Yeah.
A lot. I've been around long enough to remember when the only thing you could do was a phone call, right? That was the only, and newspaper clippings, and that was it. Some people still know what a newspaper is. Some people don't. And so you go through a lot of changes, not just, and now there's this explosion of information, so now, before there was not really very much access to information, and now the problem's on the other end where everyone has access to everything. I remember the first time I was entering someone in a meet, and someone on the team was looking at the entries as I was entering them, and they're like, why did you seed me at that? And I'm like, I just entered you 5 minutes ago. Like, the entries aren't even closed. Like, give me a break. But now really that's the way it is, where, as an athlete, you can follow a variety of people. You can get access to information about your sport. We can follow each other on Strava and see what people are doing training wise. And I think you have to embrace that technology and kind of keep up with things to realize that it is different. Again, you can't just do it the way somebody did it to you 20 years ago, or the way I did it 20 years ago.
Coaches now are like sending kids tweets or DMing them, and like great meet and things like that. It's just such a different time than when I was being, running in the mid 90s. It's almost overwhelming from the coach aspect and the athletes.
Yeah.
As much as I have no love lost for the NCAA, this has to be a really difficult time in terms of how they regulate recruiting and things like that. And, I'm not a huge fan of, the governing body and everything like that, but I would not want to be in the NCAA office right now trying to figure out what exactly to do with this social media stuff, how to handle it, what are the new rules and policies, because rapidly changing, like, how do you stop an athlete from allowing a coach to see their Strava because it's a social media thing? So how do you prevent that? Like, obviously there's a no tampering, but can you prevent from just linking with that college coach that you're trying to recruit with? And these have been my workouts here. You could just see them. We're not actually communicating, but you're seeing everything I'm doing. Like, I don't know. I again, no love lost for them, but man, that really sucks.
Yeah. and it has changed the game. And I'm all for student athletes' rights and opportunities, but it has created a lot more movement.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens that you guys may be aware of is if someone's having success at a school, really in any sport, this is not just a track thing, they might get followed by a lot of other schools. And if you're a smaller school, you might get followed by a bigger school. And just think what that would be like. Just think for you guys, if you're a freshman or sophomore having some success, and then some big schools start following you. Then you think, geez, maybe I should go talk to them. Maybe I should look at them. So it's created a very open marketplace, and it's created new challenges for sure. And you'd like to think that people will be honest and ethical, and do things the right way. But it's just created such an open forum that it's created a new challenge for sure.
Coming from a small school, I'm calling that tampering. Dave, you're outnumbered 2-1 here.
Listen, no, it has to be hard on coaches now, Yeah, I mean, it has to be easier in certain aspects, but harder in the other ways, especially being from a smaller school.
Yeah.
So, Coach, I want to jump into your post-coaching career because, this is something I think about this sport, and a lot of sports have this obviously. I think it might just be a coaching thing because coaches, we can never stop, right? Dave and I still love being coaches, which is why we talk to athletes and coaches every single week. Like it's still kind of there. But, you had a very successful time at Monmouth. You left that program in a really, really good position. A program that people know about nationally now, right? There's some national names. At Monmouth Jersey is at NCAAs pretty often. And you jump right back into the sport. Like we said earlier, you're, a coach and event director at Show AC. You're a consultant. What made you want to keep going in the sport and keep giving back to the sport?
Yeah, I don't think I was sure about all the things that I would do. Some of them have happened a little bit accidentally, but I think my answer to why is why not? In a position where you still can hopefully make an impact in one way or another. And I'm doing a big variety of things now, but they're all things that I enjoy, and you try to have an impact in different ways. And it's been a good learning experience for me. I coach everything from 5-year-olds to 75-year-olds now, and that's different. They're different than college kids. And helping to direct some events, both college events and some Shore AC events. Some of that are things that I knew and I had done before, and some of those things are brand new, and things that you need to learn how to do. So I'm glad to still be able to contribute in a lot of different ways, for sure.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Monmouth Invitational meet that they have every single summer. It was one of my favorite meets to go to in high school. Just to go watch, seeing some pro athletes. How do you guys go about getting some of these top pros to come to Monmouth in early September?
Yeah. So you're talking about the New Jersey, okay. This is probably this is the third year that I've been involved. And the first year was when things were still partially shut down. And the New Jersey International Meet has this long history. This will be year 36 for the meet. There's been athletes from 40 different countries there. There's been dozens of Olympians that have come to the meet. But in the last few years leading into the pandemic, the meet wasn't as big or as strong as it had been. And then, coming out of the pandemic, you really have to almost start over. But there is a nice tradition with the meet with some people like Elliot Denman, who the meet is now named after, 1956 Olympian.
Great man.
Speaking of people who still do a lot for the sport.
Wonderful man.
He's 89. And when I wake up in the morning, almost every day I have 3 or 4 new emails from Elliot with ideas and things that we need to do.
Awesome.
So he's keeping me busy.
Send Elliot here. This is the ideas place. We want them all.
Yeah.
He's a legend.
Absolutely. And he's so excited the meet is now named after him, and he wants this year to be special. And it's really just, part of it is the tradition and the history of the meet. Part of it is, and I know you talked to Dave Alfano about this, part of it is just having the right kind of environment that the pros want to be in, and that involves prize money and opportunities to compete and opportunities to qualify for the things that they want to qualify for.
Yeah,
So it's really a variety of things.
The mile there is always pretty stacked. It always has great guys. It's usually always sub 4. It's just a great meet to go and watch. I used to go when I was in high school. Every year, my season would be over. I'm like, hey, Dad, drive us there. Or then when I could drive, I would go. It was just a fun meet to go watch and see some pros, see some guys run sub 4, run 45 seconds in the 400. It was just always fun. And one of my favorite was the Masters Mile, watching these older guys, like a Harry Nolan, I think his name was, go there and run like a 449 at the age 60. It was always just a fun meet to go to, and it brought all different aspects of people. I had very fond memories of going to that meet.
Yeah, yeah, and Harry's a good example of how you can stay in the sport. He's been. I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it's between 50 and 60 years in a row now that he's competed at Penn Relays and at the Polar Bear Race, which happens in December.
Yep.
And he's been at them every year for 50 plus years.
Legend.
And not just there for a walk in the park. Like if you are lining up next to Harry, you better have your A game on, because he's going to try to beat you.
That's awesome. So, if anyone's listening to this and it's like me, I'll say I don't run much anymore. My knees shot, my ankle shot. Like I go out, I'll run, I'll do it for 3 weeks, and then I'll be sore for 9. It's kind of counterproductive. But if there's someone like me or someone out there that's just listening, doesn't run as much, but is listening to this and is like, man, I still want to be involved in running. I still want to do something. What's one way that you can, or a few ways that you can encourage people to get involved locally, to help out the sport, to help grow the sport, to help kind of, do something?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that our sport can be a lifelong sport. And I know, injuries and not wanting to be in oxygen debt and there's other reasons to not want to continue competing, but it's and Elliott's a good example of that, because he's wants people to continue competing all the time. So the last few years he's gone to Masters meet and just done the shot put, at 80 something years old, because he's like, hey, everybody can still do this. So, there's a way, if you want to do it, to still be involved. I've had a number of former sprinters and jumpers and throwers that have gone on to run a marathon because they want to stay in the sport somehow. And
nice.
If I told them that they could do that when they're in college, when they didn't want to do a 2-lap warm up, they'd be like, no, there's no way I can do that. And a couple of years later, I'm like, well, look what you're doing. Look what you did. So there's still ways to stay in the sport that way, and kind of keep yourself healthy and fit and active in our sport in one way or another. But there's other ways to stay involved too. With Shore AC, we're always looking for people that want to be involved with an event, just to help, just to volunteer. So that is an avenue that's always available, and we're not alone. Other events and other clubs are looking for the same thing.
How can people get in contact with Shore AC if they want to reach out? What's a way to contact them?
Me. We have, I do a lot of the events with Erin O'Neill, and she's a former college runner as well. She ran at LaSalle.
Yep.
So we're always looking for people that want to help, and they can just reach out to us through the Shore AC website for sure. There's another avenue, and you guys talked about this in one of your other shows a little bit, that if our sport's going to do well, we need people who have been involved with the sport or are fans of the sport to use what they have to give back. And sometimes that's financial.
Yep.
We talk about time, talent, and treasures. Some people, what they need to contribute is some treasure, because that could help some events for sure. And then another way, and some people will think this is too nerdy and it's not for them, but there's a huge shortage in track and another sport of officials.
Yep.
I help with some college events. I don't know if these numbers are true, so I don't want to sound like a bad politician and just be making up numbers, but the numbers that a prominent official told me was that pre-pandemic there were 10,000 USATF officials, certified officials, and that post-pandemic that number is 4,500.
Yeah, and also the issue that I'm saying too, when I go to meet is some of the officials are still there from when I was running 1990s.
Right.
There's such a smaller influx of younger people getting involved after their careers in officiating. It's still like, some people have been there 30, 40 years, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes a fresh set of eyes or younger bodies can certainly help impact and speed up meets and just make everything kind of
right, better for everybody. Because some of those folks can't do it forever.
And we love to complain about it, and then people will complain about officiating, and like we saw with the false start this past weekend,
but they don't get involved,
or taking that kid out for throwing his fist up. But then it's like, okay, then give your time. Then go out there and be a 40-something-year-old instead of the 75-year-old that's still giving their time to walk across a track in the 200. It's like, I agree with that. We do need more people. I feel like that would be a big boon if we can have more efficiency at the meets. And like Dave said, there's nothing wrong with being a 75-year-old official. But when they're the most prominent ones at some of the biggest meets, it does tend to move a little bit slow at times.
Yeah. And I told a couple of young people, a couple of recent Monmouth grads, if they get certified to be an official, they can kind of pick their spots. It's not like you're locked in and you have to do 20 meets and you have to do it every weekend. You can kind of say, hey, you know what? I'm going to the beach, or I'm doing some other things these other weekends, but I'm free for some of these Tuesday meets. And these couple of weekends I would work a meet. And it's at the point now where you could do that, where you could say, here's my schedule. Here's the weekends that I want to do this. Yeah. And almost guaranteed you'll get hired.
There's so many high school meets that have one official there. So it's coaches can't really coach their teams because they got to time everybody. They have to rake the laundry. There's definitely a huge shortage, especially when we used to have all these dual meets. Now it's starting more where they're having conference meets. So it's a little bit less. But if there was every team had to meet on Tuesday against one other team, sometimes there would be no official that would show up, and it was all on the coaches. And then you have a hard time coaching your own team because you have to take care of things that are really you shouldn't have to. And it's not even
a bunch of teachers hand timing to help out. That was all the time teachers helping out in the high school.
And I'm like, oh, well, third place cited a faster time than first place. Well, that ain't going to work.
Yeah. No, it's true. And, it's a bigger issue, but part of the reason people don't want to be track officials is you don't make what you make as a basketball official, for instance. It's not your get rich quick scheme by any means.
Isn't that crazy? Like, you make less money, but you're there probably 3 times as long on a Saturday meet at an invitational. So, that does kind of suck too. That the pay doesn't correlate with the amount of time.
I'll say this: the time, but they make less calls. They're firing the gun. They're making sure everything. Obviously, I've never been an official, so there's probably some intricacies in terms of certifying things and everything that I don't know behind the scenes. But in terms of the on the field work in the middle of the action, a basketball and football official is kind of.
It depends on the event.
More on top. It does depend on the event.
Like if you're doing shot put, you have to mark every single thing. You have to make sure that you watch it and mark every single throw. So it's definitely
it's still a difficult job like anything else.
Yeah, but it just stinks, that we have so few because it could really help the sport. I think that's one of the best points that we've had on this.
Without a doubt.
And I think Eddie Baines was bringing that up too, but we just ran out of time. But there's such a need for good, solid officials who are competent and can just help these meets. And because it helps everyone. It helps coaches, helps athletes. It just helps everybody keep the sport progressing.
So I have 2 more questions before we jump out of here, Coach, because, I don't want to keep you for too long. First one is we've asked a lot of athletes and some coaches in the New Jersey area high school about the Meet of Champions because there's a lot of things the NJSIA seems to just want to keep tinkering and keep on trying to knock on the door getting rid of the Meet of Champions. They want to get rid of all these big meets that New Jersey's had. And we just want to get kind of a catalog out there of all the athletes that have competed, the coaches that have been there. Now, I want to get it from a collegiate coach in New Jersey. How important is the Meet of Champions for you in cross country and track and field in terms of your recruiting? Because obviously everyone does go and look at nationals, right? You want to get those caliber kids. But is there something that with the Meet of Champs that kind of lets people stand out in New Jersey? Do you weigh that very heavily if they can perform well at Meet of Champions in New Jersey?
Yeah, because not every state has a state champion. It stops, group level or sectional
Right,
level.
right. Yeah, most states don't. Most states just have their group level meets and that's it. So you got multiple state champions in every event, and New Jersey has that opportunity for people to go on. And I for the last couple of years I've helped out a little bit with mile split, and mile split in New Jersey especially gives our sport tremendous coverage.
Tremendous. Keller does an amazing job.
Yeah. Robert and
Robert May, his wife,
and May and
wonderful
Jim
work.
Lambert, those guys are amazing. Yep. They're not responsible for putting on the meets, unlike what some people think. That's CNJ.
They just help. They just take the times, see everything, but they're not in charge of who runs and who doesn't run or any of that.
Yep. Yeah. And I was helping out last year, working with Jim Lambert, just doing some interviews at the Meet of Champs. And I hate to say it, but the Meet of Champs last year, partly because of the schedule conflict that was created, was probably the worst one. There
was all these national meets. There was 3 of them, and they were the same weekend. It was
it was awful.
It was rough.
But in general, you guys know this. That would be a meet that even, whether it was on a Saturday or whether it was on a Wednesday, and a lot of years it was on a Wednesday, coaches would fly in from all over the country for that meet. I mean, I would go to that meet and think, I'm going to get some recruiting done. And I would turn around and there's Kentucky and USC and Alabama. And they're all there. And they're all there for a reason. And it's because it's not a sectional meet and it's not a group meet. And the best athletes were all there in one place. And, you guys know New Jersey has some of the best track and field athletes in the country.
Absolutely.
One of the best states in the country. So the value of that meet is huge. And presenting that meet in a way that it should be presented, like some of these better meets are presented now, like what Dave's trying to do at Trials of Miles, and like some other meets that are put on where it's not just come and run your event and go home, but it's an event and it's a presentation and it's packaged well and there's some thought put into some of those things is huge. Yep. It's a difference maker in terms of track and field still being as strong as it is in New Jersey.
Meet a Champion should at least be a big YouTube live event. At minimum, it should have a massive promotion where you take your group champions and you find out exactly who's running what race, right? And we can promote that because, like you said, the New Jersey talent is national talent. There is no doubt about it. We're one of the best states in the country. And it should be something where it's not just how it's been a lot in the past, where it's just go there, the teams go. Yeah, there's coaches everywhere, but it's just like this Keller and we have this champion in this event. And no, it should be a big deal because it is a big deal. Because winning your Meet of Champs, and whatever you do at nationals, you do at nationals, as long as it's not scheduled the same freaking weekend. But whatever you do there is whatever you do there. That Meet of Champions moment is massive because it shows that you can win in a big race against people, some of them you've seen very often. Sometimes you're elbow to elbow with guys you just went in counties conferences, and it can be interesting there.
New Jersey Meet of Champs needs a broadcast where
it does.
Jim Lambert is on the mic, because that guy knows everything. He knows what everyone ate. He knows what everyone ate for breakfast.
Jim Lambert and Dave Hyatt on there, because Hyatt's a New Jersey track encyclopedia.
Listen, Jim Lambert's on a whole new level. The guy is an absolute genius when it comes to this stuff. He is just the absolute best. He can tell you. And his predecessor, one of my favorite men of all time, Ed Grant, was an absolute legend too. And Jim will be the first one to tell you a lot of things that he learned, and being knowledgeable and knowing things he learned from Ed Grant. Who was an absolute legend.
And Jim's a good example because, not only does he have the love for the sport that a lot of people have, but he also has a passion for it where, you can feel his energy at these meets. He's excited about what's going on. He's excited for the students and what they're doing. And we need that. We need somebody to be excited about it.
On Twitter, he does a wonderful job of promoting the state, and not only current athletes, but athletes that are now running in college. He really helps the sport in this state, and he's an absolute legend.
He's very much like Jeff Benjamin is on the more bigger level. Like Jim Lambert's New Jersey's kind of Jeff, and we were fortunate to have talked to Jeff on the show. And Jim, if you listen,
Come on, Jim, please.
Let's go. We would love it, man. We would do a 3-hour podcast with Jim. I'm sorry. We would have to extend that because I don't know if we'd be able to slow him down. But the last thing The
He'd be a
last
great
thing I want to
guest.
ask you is, we kind of hinted at it. If you had about, unlimited resources, unlimited access, could do what you want, how would you improve the sport of track and field in order to make it something where not just track junkies like us would sit there and watch, but something that a casual would be able to sit down and enjoy and watch?
Yeah, man, that's it. Give me one more hour, Alex, and I can answer that question really well.
We'll have you
Um,
back on. We'll just hash this out one day.
That'll be part two. No, I think, we mentioned the team aspect. I think that it would be valuable if we kept score more and if we focused on the team aspect more because, in our country, that's what people understand. And I know people want to position us as an individual sport, and there's a lot to be said for that. But I think when you can have a team dynamic, have a team aspect, what's the track meet that everybody in the U.S. watches? It's called the Olympics, where it's the U.S. against the world,
And there's a medal count,
Yeah, yeah. There's a medal count, and we're all watching that. And we're cheering for we haven't watched team handball in our whole life, but we're cheering for Team USA and team handball because we want to see our country get a medal, right? So I think that could be a valuable way that it could happen. The sports world is very splintered now. There's just so many things to watch and to do. And the track world is really splintered now too, where there's just so many different opportunities. There used to be one high school national meet. Now there's at least three.
It's embarrassing. That is
so, it'd be nice if we could kind of get together and get some people to work together and not just try to get their little slice of the pie, but try to do what's going to be best for the whole sport. I'll give you one example and then I'll stop because I could go on for an hour about this. One of the things I got to do as a college coach was be on some committees, some Division I executive committee and other committees. And we spent a lot of time talking about what we can do for our sport. Part of the problem is that track people are really detailed. So those meetings would devolve into whether lane 5 was better than lane 6 or tiny little details. Meanwhile, you look at some sports like college lacrosse, who got together and decided the best thing we can do is get all of our championships to happen in one place on the same weekend. And the lacrosse world comes together on Memorial Day weekend for championships in one place, Division 1, 2, 3, and it's like a festival for a couple days. And while we're worrying about these tiny details, other sports have wagering and championships and festivals and things that we're sort of like, gee, maybe we should think about that. Maybe we should do that. So we need to get together and work together to put on a better product.
So what you're saying is we need to get some more of the sprints coaches in there and a little less of the distance coaches who are more in the intricacy side and a little bit more of the sprints coaches who are more of just like
people who are the problem. I don't know.
I tend to talk. Listen, a lot of the sprinters I coached were usually people that could possibly go and really play football, or a lot of your distance guys were like, I've been stringly and gaggly my whole life. I'm just going to go run a lot. And, that's not to say there aren't some great athletes in the distance, but the percentage seems to be a little bit higher there than, in the sprints area. But
yeah,
I tend to agree with you.
Because everybody kind of protects their little corner of the market, both in the college world and beyond.
Yeah.
And, at some point you have to put that away and say, hey, maybe adding this event or subtracting this event or promoting this event is not best for me or my program, but it's good for the sport.
Clayton Murphy said it the best. There's no reason why he should be winning as much money in the 800 as, Jacobs in the 100. He flat out says it, or Noah Lyles in the 100 because people come to see the 100. No, very few people are coming to watch him in the 8. And that's very, big for arguably the best 800 meter runner in the country right now, at a pro level to say that, Noah deserves more. But that's a hard thing that, like you said, that's a hard conversation to have and a realization that, maybe more people need to come to, right?
Yeah. We need to do more of that, or we're going to keep getting passed by other sports that are just marketing themselves better.
100%. 100%. So, marketing coach, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was an absolute blast.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Dave. Could chat with you guys all night, but, at some point, people don't want to listen all night either, right?
Again, I say all the time, we're not Joe Rogan yet. We can't do 5 hour 5-hour podcasts. Like, we're not there yet. When we do, we'll do that. But once again, he's Joe Compagni. He is a former director, head coach at Monmouth University for 2.5 decades. coach and event director over at Shore AC now. You want to get involved, go on the website, go get in contact with him. And he's just heavily involved still in running in every which way. And I want to bring up a few things that he wanted to promote real quick. Some big events in the summer. We talked about the LA Deadman, New Jersey International Track and Field meet over at Monmouth University. That's June 17th. Hyatt gave a nice promotion there. Go out there, fun family thing. Go see a lot of fast runners. Are entries still open to that, or is that locked in?
They are. They're still open till the day after the meet of champs.
All right, so we'll everyone, any pros that are listening, I don't know if anyone listens anymore, because since we had Clayton and Robbie, maybe go run there. Go run. Go do it. Monmouth's beautiful. Also, the Big Bang Mile, July 15th, USATF, the New Jersey 2023 Road Mile Championship over at Homedale. Go over there. Go on the website. runsignup.com at race/NJ/Homedale/Big Bang Mile. The Asbury Park George Sheehan Classic 5K, the fastest road 5K in New Jersey last summer. And then the Monmouth Mile, Thursday, August 31st through the 2nd. The second fastest outdoor track mile in the U.S. last year. So, and that'll be at the new CBA track in Lincroft, which Coach helped design. So those are the big events that he's talking about. But also, Coach, you wrote a book about the NIL, and you developed a speaker series. Talk to us. What's this book? What do we got? Promote it.
Do we have another hour for that too?
Maybe not. 5 minutes.
No,
5 minutes.
There's a real quick group of guys that I work with, Next Level Holdings, and we've done two things together. One is the Hydra Patch, which is a new product that's coming out. We're really excited about that. It'll be out in the next few months. And the other is the NIL playbook. So we've been to some schools and spoke to them. We have a speaker series and produced a book that is really designed for student athletes to help them navigate this whole name, image, and likeness landscape that's in college athletics and starting to move into high school athletics now as well.
So yeah, once again, it was a blast to have you on. Everyone go out, if you're a college athlete, go get that book. And if you are at a meet and you see Coach Compagni there, go up and talk to him. He's one of the nicest people in our whole sport. He'll give anybody the time of day. And, so definitely it was a blast having you on. We really appreciate it. Hi, anything to say before we jump out of here?
I just want to say, it's kind of an inspiration to see someone who, after a great college career, could have called it quits, but that you're still going strong, still doing everything that you can to promote the sport, make the sport better and bigger than it's ever been. And I just hope that there's more people like you out there who want to do what's best and make the sport as best as I know and you guys know that it can be.
Definitely. So once again, Talking Nobles, go give us a like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars. Spotify and iTunes, spread this word of mouth. Social media, go find us at Talking Nobles. We will be back again next week, probably on Monday, maybe on Tuesday. Who knows? We'll be here one of those days, but we'll talk to everyone later. So long.